again, structured conversation in some way to get people to think about different issues, right? So these bullet points are just kind of, this is almost like my cheat sheet as I'm finishing a process and thinking through it. What are all the things I need to think about to incorporate into that process before people kind of come together, right? So I don't know if, again, I'm not going to walk all the way through this. We don't have too much time to spend on this because we want to spend a lot of time on issue framing before we're done today. But I don't know if any of those bullet points jump out at you. If you want to spend a little time kind of talking through it. Does anyone else need one of those? We got extras here.
What does conflict management procedure mean?
How do we deal with conflict when it comes up? Right? So, and part of that is, I'll kind of talk about this, is we're analyzing issues beforehand. If we know that there's people that really disagree that being in the same room is going to be a problem, then how do we think about it? One example of this where I'm really trying to develop that, one of the first things that we did was that grade configuration I mentioned. To give a little bit of background, is our local schools, it's kindergarten to 12th grade. It used to be elementary schools were K to 6, then junior highs were 7, 8, 9, and high schools were 10, 11, 12, right? The norm is a 4-year high school. The norm is K to 5, and then 3-year junior high and a 4-year high school. But we were K to 6, and then a 3-year to 4-year, right? Or a 3 to 3-year. So the school district was looking at changing it, right? And essentially by moving the 9th graders up to high school and moving the 6th graders up to junior high, right? It was very much a wicked problem because everyone wanted 6th graders to stay in elementary school. They actually saw it as another year of childhood, right? If you send 6th graders to junior high, they're growing up too fast. You're throwing them to the wolves, right? So everyone wanted 6th graders to stay in elementary school, but everyone wanted 9th graders to be in high school, right? 9th graders need to be in high school. This counts towards college now, right? High school had a much varied curriculum, and they're bigger schools, and so everyone wanted 9th graders in high school. Everyone wanted 6th graders in elementary school. No one wanted 2-year junior highs, right? So at first, it was this very kind of conflict, like everyone blamed the superintendent, the new superintendent, so blame the devil figure, right? It's all his fault, whatever. It was almost textbook. It was our first real event, right? I still remember we had like 4 rooms going. Well, first of all, we had 4 rooms going, and then I walked away for a second to call my wife and say, "Yeah, there's about 100 people here." It's like first event, and all of a sudden someone goes, "Who the heck's in charge here?" I'm like, "Well, gotta go." I run back. This guy, why the heck am I in there talking to a CSU student? So I kind of explained, well, it's a new organization. We're the Center for Public Relations. We train the students to be facilitators. They're in each room we're here as an impartial resource, so we're collecting all the data. Everything we write down is going to go to the school district. Well, where the heck is the superintendent? I'm like, I'm pretty sure the superintendent's in this room. We have an assistant superintendent in this room. I think they're going to rotate and listen, right? While we're running it. He's like, "Oh, that's pretty cool." And he went back in. So that happened. And then later on, the superintendent came out and was chatting with me. And then the assistant superintendent walked out of the room and said, "I've never seen that before." And it's like, "What?" It's like, "There's this woman. She was so angry at the ridiculous notion of moving 6th graders up. But then a woman on the other side of the table who had a 9th grader kind of explained why she needed her 9th grader in high school. And the first woman understood her and made sense, and they'd never seen interaction, right? Because all their processes had been one at a time on a microphone. So they let each person rant, but they never had a process. So it was this perfect, our first event ever was like this textbook case of you have a round table and a process, and people listen to each other, and they realize, oh, that makes sense. I never thought about that, And it's really hard to demonize the other parent. It's easy to demonize the superintendent, But anyway, in that process, I remember, again, this was our first night. We learned so many lessons our first night. Afterwards, someone came in and said, there was a participant, and said, "You know what, I'm a conflict negotiation person, but I'm also a parent." I was here. I was like, your students did great, except one thing, right? There was 2 people that really disagreed in our room, and they let them go too long. And part of it was the conflict management kind of paradigm, that the students were thinking we need to resolve that conflict, right? But within deliberation, I don't need to come to consensus, right? Our groups are trying to explore the issue, to understand the issue, to get us good data about how people talk about the issue. We don't have to we're not coming to agreement, in most cases in our thing, right? So now we teach our students, it's like, okay, you want to mind that conflict, you want to understand that conflict, you want to make sure both sides are actually, we don't want them to talk past each other, right? We don't want them to exaggerate the conflict. But once we understand the conflict, once the 2 of you know what she means and she knows what you mean, y'all still might very much disagree, but at least you'll understand each other. And then we're done, we can move on, right? So that's the conflict management thing. Like, if conflict comes up, do we need to resolve it? Like if we were working for Matthew's house at a retreat and we had to make a decision, we have to resolve the conflict. right? We have to agree to disagree or whatever, right? But if we're doing a public engagement thing and we have 20 groups going to give feedback on a policy, each individual group's not deciding. So as long as we understand the conflict, give it in the notes and move on, right? So we actually tell our students that if there's a conflict between two people, once it plays out, say, okay, so what I wrote down is that for you, this is very important, where for you, this is really important. Is that good? Yes. Okay, now let's move on, right? So you're cutting off that conflict because you don't want everyone else to have to listen to this conflict for 20 minutes, right? So that's what we say, conflict, we have to think through and teach our students. If someone really disagrees, to what degree do we need to spend time resolving that, and to what degree can you, we had this perfect, for the river stuff, some very passionate people. So we had a mayor of a small town close to us that really needed this reservoir, and then the associate director of the Save the Pooter, this interest group that was very pro-river, and they were just going at it. And both probably 40-50-year-old and my facilitator, a 17-year-old female, we have this on tape, right? They went back and forth, and said, okay, stop it. Right? I'm gonna give you 10 seconds, summarize your opinion, we're writing it down. I'm gonna give you 10 seconds, summarize your opinion, we'll write it down, now we're moving on, right? And that's exactly what she should have done, right? But it was great to see the 17-year-old just kind of stop these two men and say, we're done, right? So that's a somewhat long answer to your quick question. Any others in there we want to make? Lots of choices, obviously, in designing. We talked a little bit, the second to last one, closure option, we talked a little bit about that yesterday, right? That, when you do small groups, people always feel like, I don't know what's going on. So, there's lots of ways for us to think about, you give them some sort of closure to feel at the end of the meeting that they've accomplished something, that their time was used well. Someone asked earlier, the third bullet point, convening an audience development method. Sometimes we're much more scientific. We have a random sample. That takes a lot of money, so I don't tend to do that. But in my field, they tend to do that sometimes. Sometimes it's an invited audience. I have specific people that we're kind of inviting to represent. I did something for the Downtown Business Association on a conflict about the boxes, the little newspaper boxes that start. There was no rules, so there was just more and more boxes, and each a different color, and each a different size, and started looking ugly. Right? So the Downtown Business Association said, "Hey, we'll pay for it, but we're going to have one big thing that has 10 slots, and then people can kind of rent slots out of us, but it's all uniform." But then all the newspaper companies were like, "No, that takes away our freedom of speech and all this kind of stuff." And we can't differentiate each other from each other. My box is part of my branding, and so I ran a process where several business owners and several of the different media groups kind of come together. So for that one, it was invited. We wanted specific representatives, and that group was empowered to make a decision in a sense. Right? Whereas most of our events are just public. We get in the newspaper, we send out press releases, but then we also, and you'll see this with the stakeholder analysis in a second, we identify key groups that be there, and then we try to get them there. Right? And that's why we often do the pre-surveys where we ask demographics so we can see if there's a group that we need there that's not coming, then we work a little bit harder to get them there. Right? But we also recognize that it's going to be unbalanced. Right? Some people are going to people can mobilize and show up that are against something and kind of dominate the conversations in some senses. Right? So that's always kind of a tension in there between invited or how much control you have over the audience in a sense. And it's difficult in particular. The biggest challenge for me in terms of convening an audience is, like for most events, the more the merrier, right? Let's get as many people that can come, right? It'd be great. So you just publicize it and get articles written and stuff. I'm trying to do small group discussions, right? So I might have, say, 20 students available to show up, and I need 2 students at every table, right? So that means I can cover 10 tables. We can fit 8 people. I can cover 80 people, right? So I'm trying to PR this event to get 80 people to show up. And 90 people would be a problem, right? And really 70 people is great. 70 people means I just have, 7 people per table versus 8, right? So it's really hard that we start publicizing things, but then at some point I get scared, like, too many people are going to show up, right? And I've had the newspaper call me, "Hey, we're going to write an article about your event." No, do that. I'm going to take more people, right? So there's this tension about
Do you find that when you register people that about 30% do not show up?
Yeah, so we do RSVPs, we normally say RSVP preferred.
Yeah.
Or sometimes if we think it's gonna be a pretty tight audience, we'll say that RSVP guarantees you the spot, right? And so then when they're walking in, if they RSVP, we give them a name tag. If we're close to full, like if we could fit 80, so we RSVP'd in an 80, we said, okay, no more RSVPs. If someone walks up, we say, well, wait, if someone doesn't show up, well, we can set them later. But yeah, we normally find out that the RSVP number is actually pretty good, but the reason it's good is 100 people will RSVP, 70 of those people will show up, and then 30 random people will show up. So it happens to work out that 100 people showed up, but it's not the 100 people that said they're going to show up. Right? But it gives us a pretty good sense of how many we'll have in a way. But I know we don't want to spend too much time on the community side of things, but I just wanted to open that up if any of these jump out at you.